So I'm walking down the Amstel and I'm dodging drunk people. It's only early afternoon, but 2019 Pride is in full swing. And honestly, I think I should just go home. The boats all look to me like corporate pinkwashing. What do these companies actually do during the rest of the year to support human rights? I see a drag queen dancing over the logo of a bank that I know has investments in a country that executes gay people. There's this group of kids next to me that is drunk and loud and appears to be entirely cis and straight couples. Now, I know gender and sexual orientation are internal, but I look at the girls with the tiny unicorns braided through their hair and the glitter makeup, and I just wonder, are they cosplaying? Last year, a butch lesbian told me that a group of girls dressed in rainbows at Pride looked at her and said, "What is that?" Now, I came of age during the AIDS crisis, so I know how important Pride is. But this year, I have no forgiveness in my heart. I've spent the past month researching the first wave of anti-gay persecutions in the Netherlands. In 1730, an Utrecht sexton testified that he'd caught two men having sex in the Domtoren, the iconic church tower of Utrecht. That single accusation set off waves of prosecutions that would last for the rest of the century. One of the men accused was a soldier named Zacharias. And Zacharias had been stationed all over the Dutch Republic. And everywhere he went, he had connected with these underground networks of gay men. In order to save his own life, Zacharias gave information on the networks. Now, the country was already on edge. There was massive inequality and a series of wars that only benefited the rich. All of that fear and anger got channeled into the destruction of the communities that Zacharias revealed. One of the men he'd met in Amsterdam was a jeweler named Johannes Cape. Johannes had lived and worked in Assendelft until somehow he got the name of Peter Martijns, a man who ran a boarding house in Amsterdam for men like him. As he'd helped so many others before him, Peter helped Johannes get settled in Amsterdam, and the two became quite close. In fact, they became so close that Johannes stayed with Peter, even after his business was so successful that he could hire a servant. The teenage servants of Johannes and Peter were arrested along with them. The record of their interrogation is still in the city archive. You can't tell from the spindly Middle Dutch handwriting what torture was used, just that they were interrogated separately with time in between each interrogation so they could heal for the next one. Johannes held out the longest, even after he was told that the others had confessed. Peter held out until Zacharias was brought in to confront him. Peter and Johannes were strangled publicly, a form of execution that was reserved for women traditionally, and their bodies were burnt. Their teenage servants, Cornelius and Maurits, were publicly drowned. Their deaths were among the first of 600 in the next 70 years. So there I was at Pride, furious that more people don't know this story, furious that my country that I came from feels like it's about to repeat it. I didn't know if I should just go back to my apartment or start yelling at random people on the street. And then a sight across the river stopped me short. I was across from these old Amsterdam mansions, one of which I know is inhabited by the Van Six family, one of those families that's ruled Amsterdam through politics and wealth for 4 centuries. And the balconies and front porches of these iconic 17th century houses were crowded with people waving rainbow flags. The bridges over the canals and the 3 rows of boats on both sides of the Amstel were packed with people cheering for a boat of drag queens as they danced by. And then just over the tops of the roofs, I could see these huge rainbow flags flying from the tops of government buildings. Without warning, I burst into tears. You know, the kind of sobs that feel like you're choking? All I could think is what it would mean for Johannes and Peter and Maurits and Cornelius to see what Amsterdam would become. It's not perfect, and we have a long way to go. But it is a monumental thing that Amsterdammers gather every year to celebrate a minority, one that's been brutalized and demonized for centuries. The slogans of 2019 Pride were, "Remember the past and create the future." And as I was standing opposite these iconic houses, I realized that remember the past isn't just about remembering its heroes and its victims, though we should. It's also a marker by which we can see how far we've come and what we can slip back into if everyone who wears rainbow on Pride doesn't take that fight through the rest of the year. The next boat showed me how we'll create the future. It was full of LGBT plus supporting parents. My generation clung on by its fingernails until we were old enough to leave home. Friends who came out or were outed had to live on the street. Our elders in the gay community talked about each other as the family that you chose, which was beautiful, but it also came from what we all took to be the inevitable certainty that families would reject their LGBT plus members. The kids of the parents in this boat, they're growing up in a world where the entire city comes out every year to celebrate them, where their parents support them instead of trying to punish it out of them, where their cis and straight peers have an annual reminder to celebrate the diversity of gender and sexual orientation. I can't imagine what it would be to grow up in a world like that, and I can't wait to see what these kids will do.